Ew. Yeah, we got a mess here. Now, the problem with a fork seal leak is, well, your brakes are right below where that oil is dripping out. And well-oiled brakes, well, that's not what you want your brakes to do. Hello, my name is Mike. This is a bike. This particular bike is my 2015 Victory Cross Country. And like so many other cross countries out there, the front fork seals have decided to spray the brakes with fork oil. Now, fork oil is supposed to be inside the forks to act as a dampener. So when we go over bumps, it kind of cushions the ride and dampens the ride. But unfortunately, well, it's kind of one of the weak spots of all Victory motorcycles. At least it's been my experience. Pretty much every Victory motorcycle that I've resurrected has required replacing the fork seals. Now, the procedure varies depending on the model of the bike. The early bikes were a regular fork where the larger cylinder is at the bottom and the small inner tube is at the top. But on models like the Kingpin and the Hammer and Cross Country, they're what we call inverted forks, where the larger cylinder is on the top and the inner tube is on the bottom. So the procedures are similar, but they're different enough that each bike has its own unique problems and so forth. So stick around. In this episode, we're going to put fork seals, new fork seals, in the front forks of this 2015 Victory Cross Country. Stick around.
Somewhere in a dusty, dirty back alley in western Arizona is an old fart trying to cram a square peg into a round hole. He'll work on anything, just as long as it's got at least 2 cool wheels.
Things are so chaotic around here. I've been busy doing stuff. And I keep telling myself, when I finish the next project, I'm going to go through and do a complete organization and cleaning up of my garage. But that never really happens. I'm not the most organized person, and I always wind up delving into a new project before I'm done cleaning up from the previous project. But I have improved. I've gone from piles of asimilar components to piles of somewhat similar components. Hopefully one day I'll have nice, neat piles of completely identical components, but don't hold your breath. Anyway, let me put these away and we'll get started on the forks. The proper way to do forks on this bike would be to completely remove them from the triple trees and put them in a holding fixture, which of course I do not have, nor do I wish to purchase on account of, well, I'm a cheapskate. And as you can see, well, you can barely see the clamps, but the forks have clamps at the top and the bottom that hold the tube here. You can see a clamp at the top and a clamp at the bottom. And then when the fork tubes are removed, then they can be disassembled. There's a little bit of valving inside them. There's some small seals and so forth in there. And there's bushings, top bushing and bottom bushing, that allow the inner portion to slide within the outer portion. And they do wear over time, so they do require periodic replacement. And you can get a kit for about $100 or something that has all those components in it, and that'd be the right way to do it. But that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it the wrong way. I'm going to do it the cheap way. So I jumped online and I did a search for fork seals for a Victory Cross Country on Evil Bay, and of course I selected lowest price plus shipping first, and grabbed a set of seals. Seals arrived the other day, These are the same seals that I put on Gordon's trike, and I found that the dust seals were slightly too wide and would not fully press into the bore of the fork. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shortcut it even more. I'm actually going to reuse the old dust seals and just use the fluid seals out of this kit. And actually, if I'm not taking the fork tubes out of the bike, you'll find that doing these seals actually isn't that bad. And in fact, in my opinion, these are probably the easiest bike to do fork seals on. We'll start by removing the fender and the wheels and the brakes, and we'll get it down just in the nitty-gritty, just the forks hanging out of the bike. And then what we do is remove that dust seal. This dust seal here, it's just a friction fit, pops right out. And then there's a bolt, an Allen bolt, that goes in through the bottom of the fork tube. You see there's an opening there, and there's a bolt up in there. You need a really long Allen to reach it, but when you remove that, then the entire inner tube slides out of the outer tube, and you can easily access the fluid seal that we need to replace. Now, when I went to do the fork seals on Gordon's bike, it turns out that for whatever reason, the 2012 had a different size axle nut. The axle shaft was a different size. And I've always used a 14 on mine. I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't fit his. So this was my solution. Yeah, his was a 15. And I went to Harbor Freight. I went to the local hardware store. I went to Home Depot. I went to all the places, the auto parts stores, looking for a 15 millimeter hex, and nobody had one. So here's a little clip of one of these in the process. do you do if nobody has a 15 millimeter hex key socket? You make your own. Oddball size. Even Harbor Freight didn't have it. So I had to make one out of an old socket and a bolt. How's that for a tool? Yeah, it needs a little more grinding yet, but looks like crap. Nobody ever claimed I never claimed to be a welder, that's for sure. And you can tell, huh? Well, what have we here? There's a little birdie who would like to come in. He's knocking on the door. Or he's eating the fiberglass, not sure which. I've heard of woodpeckers. Is there such a thing as a fiberglass pecker? This is the tool that you're going to need to get the inner forks out of the outer forks. Up inside the bottom here of the fork, there's an opening, and there's a bolt that goes all the way through that holds it to the upper piece. Now, when you go to do that, remember, well, if all your fluid hasn't leaked out, like often is the case, whatever fluid is left is going to come gushing out onto the floor and make a huge mess. So you want to make sure you get a drip pan in place. And once that bolt comes out, this entire piece is going to slide out of here quite easily. So be prepared to catch it so it doesn't fall into your drain pan and splash the oil you just captured all over the floor, which kind of defeats the purpose of the drain pan. So that'll be our next process. Typically what I like to do is remove the dust seal first. Behind this dust seal, there's a spring that holds the main seal in, the fluid seal in. So I like to have those loose so that when the tube comes out, if that seal wants to come with it, it can. And it saves us having to try and pop it out after the tube is already out. So sometimes it comes out with it, sometimes it doesn't. And now if you look up in there, you'll see, I don't know if I can get the camera angle right. Now there's a snap ring up in there. And snap ring. Try to get a view of it. And you just want to pop that bag bolt out of there. And there's our snap ring. That's what actually holds the fluid seal in. It's still an interference fit into this housing. So sometimes it comes out with the tube, sometimes it does not. Most of the time it does not. You're going to have to get up in there with a tool and pop it out. Okay, and I would do the same on this side as well. Try to get our seal loose here. Work with me here, seal. There we go. And as I said before, due to the nature of the new ones that I received, I'm very likely to reuse these dust seals. After all, they're not really designed to stop the fluid. They're really there to keep the dust from getting on. And you can see this one's got a lot of dust around the edge. Yeah, keeping your fork tubes clean is a huge help on these bikes. You'll notice I took some fork protectors off. These bikes come from the factory with plastic fork protectors. They break all the time. But there are metal ones available, like the pair I took off of this bike. If you can find a set of those, I'd recommend them. They're much more durable. So now I've got the seal out. A few things we have to watch out for. Where'd I put it? When you go to pop the seal out, you're going to leverage underneath the seal, and you're going to go in alongside this piston, if you will. And as you come up inside of it, well, you want to get a hold of it and pop it out without scratching the opening that it goes in. I've done that. I've scratched it. You end up with a leak along there. If you do inadvertently scratch it, which I've also done because, well, sometimes I'm clumsy, you can clean it out real good with brake clean and put a little bit of the oil-resistant RTV in that scratch area. And then when you put your new seal in, it will still seal. So you'll be okay. I've been there and done that. The other thing is, Directly below that seal, or above that seal, is a spacer, a metal spacer. This spacer is very important. This is what holds the bushing in place, which is your lower bushing. So this has got to go in before you put your new seal in. Now, the way I hold things together and lubricate things is I like to use trans gel. For those of you that aren't familiar with trans gel, it is like an assembly lube used by transmission men and women. This stuff here, trans gel, I've used it for years. This goes back to when I used to rebuild automatic transmissions. And the good thing about this stuff is not only is it a lubricant, but it's also, because it's a gel, it's got a kind of a gelatinous texture to it. It will glue things in place for you. So that, for example, that spacer, I'll put a little trans gel on it, it'll glue it in, it'll hold it there just fine until I can get my seal fully installed. And trans gel is basically petroleum jelly. So it's a very, very refined lubricant, and it's compatible with all lubricants. So it will just dissolve and melt and combine with your existing lubricant. It won't create some kind of a problem. So I use this on almost everything. It's very, very helpful. It provides both an adhesive characteristic as well as a lubricating characteristic. So we'll use that. We'll glue that seal in. We'll go and put our new seal in. When we go to install our new seal, when we go to install our new seals, because this is in the way and it is an interference fit, we're going to have to go in there with a drift and just kind of tap around the edges. Now, when you do that, let me get a drift here, so you can get my drift. Never mind, I didn't say that. That's a bad joke. I can't even find it. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. There's one. That's not the one I usually use, but just for demonstration purposes. So just make sure when you're knocking it in there, you're hitting it on this edge, the outer edge, and you're not hitting inside this seal, because you could damage that seal. You go all the way around the edge, you drive it in far enough that you can get that snap ring back in, and then you can put the fork tube back in. Now, when you go to put your fork tube back in, and let me demonstrate. Fork tube, I need your assistance. You're going to be putting this back in past this seal. So when you go to put it in there, you don't want to just cram it in there. You could cut it. Now, even though the edge is tapered a little bit, the metal's pretty hard and the seal's pretty soft. So I do put lubricant on it. I'll put some of that trans gel on it. And then I kind of want to put it in on one side before the other, and then just kind of push it towards that side. And then the other side will come right in without having to use a lot of force, without distorting the seal. And that just takes a little finesse. And then once you get this tube back in, you're going to replace the bolt and the copper washer in at the bottom. The copper washer is what seals it, keeps it from leaking. And then once that's back in place, then you can slide your dust seal back up into place and reassemble everything. So there it is in a nutshell. So let's get this thing put back together. I got to clean up my hands. Man, I got brake cleaner and rags. I'm styling today. I got all the good stuff. All right, now that our front end is all back together again, the next trick is to get oil into those forks. Now, if I had the forks completely out and disassembled on the bench, it'd be real easy to put oil in them before this cap got put back on. But since it's still in the bike, I've got to somehow remove that cap and get oil in it. Now, on this particular model, although there's a spring there, the spring's going kind of the opposite way. What's going to happen is I'm going to unloosen this, and I'm going to have to lower the bike on the lifting platform to push it back up and get enough opening there to get oil in. On the earlier bikes like these ones, for example, this guy here, if I take that cap off right now, I've got a loaded spring, and it'll shoot me just as well as a shotgun will. So guys, I want everybody that's watching this video to repeat after me. Do not remove the fork cap on an early victory unless you are prepared for spring tension. It will get you. It's a little different on the inverted forks. Kind of almost the opposite. So because I'm doing it one way, I don't want you to get there on one like this, or one like this, or one like this, and try to do the same thing I just did. It could injure you. So be careful, guys. All right, so get a wrench on here and we'll loosen this up. Hopefully. That's the plan anyway. So we got a little gap back there. It's a pretty snug fit, but I can squish my hose and I can get it right back into this gap back in here, and I can put the appropriate amount of fluid in. Now, the manual wasn't very helpful. It didn't give me a specific amount. In fact, the instructions I read said measure the amount that came out. Well, if I measure the amount of fluid that came out of it, I'm not going to be measuring how much is supposed to be in it because, well, it's been leaking. So my experience has been these take about anywhere from 10 to 12 ounces, so I generally put 12 ounces in them when I do them. There you can see the hose kind of wedged in there, but that's enough. I can get my fluid in. There we go. Kind of a bluish color. So this only goes to 8 ounces, so I'll do 8 and then another 4. And I know I got my 12. And there we go. There's 8. That's a slow process. This funnel and this tube are small, so it may take a while. Well, come on, leg. There you have it, folks. The incorrect way to do fork seals on a Victory Cross Country. The cheap shortcut, not the best, but that's how I do it. And once again, if you don't like the way that I do it, I suggest you get the manual and do it the way they tell you to do it instead of using my shortcut methods. And again, on the other earlier bikes, I'll try to do a video on one of them. You know, that silver one out there that I've been working on? Well, it's a Victory, so it probably is going to need fork seals as well. So I'll show you how those are done. They're a little different. And again, there is the danger of a spring taking off on you, but I'll show you the steps to do those the shortcut, wrong, bad way, like I did on this one. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.